All right, how you doing, everyone? I'm Russ Salzberg, and welcome once again to Big Blue Kickoff Live. Now brought to you by Pepsi Zero Sugar, new and improved Zero. Never tasted so good. With me, as always, my colleague and good buddy, and a very excited one at that, Paul Dottino. And at the controls, as always, the fine Pearson Butler, and of course you, the fans out there, you, the Big Blue fans who are getting themselves ready for a playoff game. Yes, a playoff game. The number for you to call, 201-939-4513. That's 201-939-4513. And Paulie, what a switcheroo. Usually on this Wednesday after the regular season, as it has become a very bad and miserable habit, we're talking about wrapping up what has been a miserable season. But no, my friend, not today. Today we're talking about going back to Minnesota for a return match, this one in the postseason.
Indeed, we are. Just over 4 days from now, a few extra hours in there, the Giants will kick it off against the Vikings, where they just played a few weeks ago and lost on a 61-yard last-second field goal. The other major difference today, Russ, is that every week, usually on Wednesday, we do this show and we start off with the injury report and we tell people about who's out, who's not going to practice, who's going to be limited. Not the case today. The Giants are as healthy as they've been all season long. Coach Dable says he's encouraged about everybody. There may be a few guys, he said, that might be a little bit limited, but it sounds as though the Giants are a full go.
Well, listen, they were all rested. I think even you were surprised. They rested everybody last week, just about everybody. But I'm going to tell you this. I mentioned it to Paul, folks, prior to us coming in here today. That season finale in Philadelphia, won by the Eagles 22-16, that to me, I was thinking about it. I have 3 favorite games of the Giants this season. Hopefully this coming Sunday will be my most favorite. But my 3 favorite games up to this point was the season opener against the Titans, when the die was cast. And Dave's went for the 2-point conversion.
Right.
Of course, when they clinched the playoff spot against the Colts. And it was this past Sunday because they played that game. 2 things were accomplished in that game to me. One, they rested what they needed to rest. So you don't have walking wounded. Guys are, I'm not saying there's no aches and pains because everybody has aches and pains at this juncture of the season. But they rested everybody that needed to be rested. But I watched subs, backups to backups play like to them it was a Super Bowl. I watched Dable. I watched Wink Martindale. I watched Kafka. Coach, like this was for all the marbles. And I watched. We've known all season long, Paul, about the camaraderie and chemistry on this team.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was just enhanced in that game. I was watching days when hey, listen, remember when there were 2 back-to-back delayed games? Davis
he lit up Davis Webb.
Yeah, he did, and rightfully so. And it was just. And then after the great catch by the guy we talk about a lot, Kenny Golladay, who's been MIA pretty much for 2 seasons, he makes that catch, and there's Dave's on a bench with him with his arm around him. The Giants played their butts off. The coaches coached their butts off. Everybody's in a right frame of mind, and they're going back to a place and a team that they know they can beat. I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but they know they can beat them. This is as I say, it's a winnable game. I don't say a team should win, that they shouldn't win. This is a very winnable game. They lost by a field goal, a 61-yard field goal the last time there. I mean, they can win this game. This is a team that's going into the postseason in a very right frame of mind.
I'm going to disagree with you about my 3 favorite games because I'm throwing the London game against Green Bay in there. I'm going to take that game over this Philadelphia game that you just saw last week. I did like what I saw against Philadelphia. There was a lot of positives to gain out of it. But for me, the game in London when, the Giants were down 20-10, and there comes Daniel Jones in the second half, leading into a field goal, a touchdown, and then they gave up the safety at the end of the game and held on to beat the Green Bay Packers. To me, I suspect that was the game when the coaching staff and front office, if they still had any doubts at all, even one iota about Daniel Jones, that's probably the game that hammered home the point that this guy is the guy. And if it wasn't then, I'll tell you right now, Russ, I believe that by Halloween they already knew that they wanted to bring Daniel Jones back.
Fair point. I wouldn't dispute that. Again, that's just everybody's own opinion, and that's a good one to talk about. But, as far as Daniel, that's a fait accompli. That's a done deal.
I mean, in a bigger scope, that victory against Green Bay made me start thinking that my pick for 8 wins wasn't just going to be met, but they had a chance to maybe exceed it. That's how important I thought that game was.
Yeah, well, listen, we sat here. You were sitting here. We weren't even doing video yet at this point when we started the season with Big Blue Kickoff Live. You were sitting here. I was sitting there. I think you said 8-9. I said 9-8, maybe 8-9, but nobody was thinking playoffs. But here we are. And if somebody would have told us that the team would have finished the way they finished, 9-7-1, with the injuries that they would have to go through.
That's the point.
That's
the whole point.
Unbelievable.
For this team to do what they did after overcoming so many injuries once again and in key spots in today's passing NFL, for you to survive despite being ravaged at wide receiver and in the secondary is nothing short of amazing.
Hey. And I will say this, there are a lot of guys here who deserve to be here. Nobody on the Giants, as terms of players, nobody deserves it more to be playing in this game this week than Nick Gates. Nobody. I mean, to me, Nick Gates, I'm not taking anything away from anybody. Nick Gates is the comeback player of the year.
Without a doubt.
His leg was shattered, crushed, went through like 7 operations, infections, everything. And folks, we're watching Nick Gates. I think people are taking it for granted because that's the way he reacts to it. He's a main force. He's an anchor. I think the rotation, which is brilliant with Dave's and the coaching staff, him and Bredesen rotating, I think that has worked out marvelously. But it's just, listen, there are so many guys who deserve this. I couldn't be happier for everybody. I mean, all jokes aside, folks, I'm not just saying it. I couldn't be happier for Paulie here. I mean, there are people, it's been a long time coming, but, it's one thing going in and, okay, so we made the playoffs. No. This is more than that. This is a confidence now that this is a very, as I say, very winnable game. To me, when you say somebody should win, let me give you an example. The 49ers should beat the Seahawks this week. The Bills should beat the Dolphins this week. The Giants very well could beat Minnesota this week. At the same time, Minnesota could very well beat the Giants. To me, it becomes a toss-up. But we're going into that game, when I say we, the Giants, we're going into that game in a right frame of mind, confidence-wise and physically, and let's get it on.
Couple of things, what you just said. No doubt to me, Nick Gates has got to be the comeback player of the year. I think that Robinson, the running back from Washington, would be my second choice after he had been injured with the gunshot and had come back to play this year for them. But it would clearly be Gates number 1, Robinson number 2. Coach of the year, there's a number of excellent candidates. Brian Dable certainly has to be in that conversation without a doubt. And as far as I'm concerned, and I posted it this morning, by far the NFL Executive of the Year is Joe Shane.
Yeah, no,
hands down.
I would agree with all that. But, again, if I'm biased about Brian Dable, I'm biased. But, I was here, as Paul was, as you, the fans, were watching. and the culture and everything, and just the way I see everybody has embraced and bought in to everything that Dable was selling. That's a masterful job. So here we are. We're getting ready to rock and roll against the Vikings in Minnesota this weekend. I like the fact that it's a 4:30 team, a 4:30 game. So let's go. Let's take care of a little business before we let's go. Again, the number is 201-939-4513. Giants fans, make sure you go and subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. The podcast features a rapid reaction after each and every game with one of our analysts, an episode midweek featuring an interview with a national analyst, and then a game preview which features a long-form interview with a current Giants player, an exclusive sit-down with Bob Papa and head coach Brian Dable, and an opponent preview of that week's opponent. Search for Giants Huddle on your favorite podcast platform, or listen on the Giants app or at giants.com/podcasts. All right?
Russ, if I may, this is important for folks to know. Minnesota does have two significant injuries that are going to be missing from their team, and this is important. Their offensive line, which has been a sieve all season. And to give you an idea of how bad it's been, I'll just give you a couple of numbers here. In terms of Kirk Cousins, who has never been a good quarterback under pressure, he's been sacked 7 times twice this year. He has been sacked at least 3 times, 7 different times this year, including once against the Giants. On the course of the season, they've given up 137 quarterback hits. This offensive line has had very, very difficult time protecting the passer. And it gets worse for them. Their starting right tackle, O'Neal, is out. Okay? Oli Uda is going to be playing right tackle against the Giants on Sunday. He's had 1 start this season. Last year, when he was starting in the NFL, he got flagged 16 times for penalties. Tied for the second most in the league. Gave up 1.5 sacks. 12 of his penalties were holding calls. He has a very, very difficult time protecting the quarterbacks off the edge.
Oh, that's what we like to hear.
In addition to that, their center, they're now down to their 3rd center, Chris Reed, who's had only 1 start at the position. 2/5 of the Vikings' offensive line are a significant liability to a line that's had trouble all year long. How do you think Wink Martindale and his defensive front are thinking about that?
Well, again, you and I have said Wink has been great all season. He was certainly great last week, in particular in the second half against the Eagles. But now it's stakes have been raised. You know, as Dave's likes to say each week, no, we just need to go 1-0. The difference this week, if you don't go 1-0 this week, you don't get a chance again till next season. So it all counts right now. Again, we're going to open up the phone lines, 201-939-4513. Just a reminder, folks, that Big Blue Kickoff Live now is brought to you by Pepsi Zero Sugar, new and improved. Zero never tasted so good. 201-939-4513. Let's get things started. Let's get it started out in Long Island and check in with Rich. Hello, Rich. You're on with Russ and Paul. How are we doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, guys. Listen, love you guys. You know, when you're talking about the 3 big plays, you know, I'm just going to say the most disappointing play of the season was the home game against the Redskins when Feliciano did that little showboating. That could have came back to haunt us. But I moved forward. Paul, you're talking about, we're healthy. And what I really like is, with Dory Jackson's back, Xavier's back.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully Lionel, Collins will we got to stop Hawkinson, their tight ends. I mean, the history with the Giant D, we get beat so often by tight ends. But having Xavier back, Andre, I think is going to be really big, bring us to the victory. And in closing, when we win, we're going to be doing it our way with the rematch in Philly and then going to San Fran for the championship game.
Well, thank you for the call, Rich. But as we like to say, and I'm a big believer in that, it's fun to look ahead, but it's also very dangerous. Let's take care of the business at hand. The business at hand are the Minnesota Vikings. As I say, it's a winnable game, very winnable. But winnable is not guaranteeable, if guaranteeable is a word. Curtis, down in San Antonio. How you doing, my friend? You're on with Russ and Paul.
Hey, I'm doing good, guys. I'm a long-time listener. I never, ever miss a show. And first time I've called, so I just wanted to
Thank you.
Introduce myself.
Sounds great. Welcome aboard.
I'm a season ticket holder, and I've been to every Giants playoff game since the year 2000. The last one I missed was the Super Bowl loss to the Ravens.
Wow. Now, are you living down in San Antonio and you fly up each week, or you're just down there?
Well, I wish I could get there every week. I go up for at least a couple games a year, and I give the rest of the tickets to friends and family that still live upstate.
Very nice. Very nice. What do you got for us today?
Yeah, so I'll be in Minnesota, and I'll be front row in the end zone right there where Bellinger caught the two-point conversion a few weeks ago. And the biggest thing I'm concerned with in this game is stopping Cook. Haven't really heard that many people talk about that, but, I think Jefferson's going to get his. But if Cook runs for 150, we're cooked. So I really think the focus needs to be on him, and I'm not sure if that's what the Xavier McKinney talk about Jefferson is all about, because seems a little out of character for McKinney to kind of talk some trash about Jefferson.
Let me run
like
something
that.
by you, okay? Let me run something by you. Hockenson and Jefferson each caught over 100 yards worth of passes against the Giants last time. Hockenson, in fact, had 2 touchdown catches in the red zone and had a career-high 13 receptions in that game. If you're the Giants, would you rather contain Jefferson and Hockenson or Cook? To me, let Cook run for 100 yards. I don't think he's as dangerous as Jefferson and Hockenson. I mean, you could take the Bill Belichick approach as he did in Super Bowl 25 against the Bills and say, look, if they want to run Cook 25 times and he gets 100 yards, fine. We're not going to let Cousins beat us through the air. We're going to beat him up in the pocket, and we're going to make sure that his 2 receivers don't get 100 yards apiece. And when I say receivers, I'm calling Hockenson a receiver. Obviously, they also have Osborne and Thielen. But those 2 guys were a tag team that absolutely sliced the Giants and drew blood every which way but loose. So to me, Cook can't beat the Giants. It's those other 2 guys.
I would say this, Paul and Curtis. I agree with Paul, but I also understand to a point what you're saying now. Like if I'm going to give Cook 100 yards, that's okay. Curtis said 150 yards.
Well, I don't want to give him more than 50.
No, that's no. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, any running back who has kind of boxcar numbers, and I look $1.50 is a boxcar number, Curtis. Then I would concur with you. But like that's why I kind of leaning more to Paul. If you're going to give him yards, listen. Jefferson, when the money was on the table, what was it, a 3rd down play or a 4th down?
He made the play.
He made the play. I mean, that's why he is regarded as...
And Hockenson high-pointed that ball in the end zone and out-jumped 2 defensive backs to catch it.
Yeah, so...
Those are the 2 guys that are more dangerous to me.
You follow what I'm saying, Curtis? But your point is well taken. Your point is well taken.
Yeah, I follow. I think if running the ball is just a little easier, and if I've got to take my chances with pressuring Cousins and getting him to do something stupid, I'd rather have him have to do that than never really have to do it if they just control the ball and run it. So, yeah, I guess we'll see. It'll be a good one.
We will. Thank you.
Curtis, I would maintain as we let him go, I would maintain this. The Giants had about 450 yards of total offense in that game a couple of weeks ago in Minnesota.
Right.
They had a fumbled by Bellinger. They had 2 fourth-quarter drops by Richie James in positive territory that would have been first downs. My point is, they could have put up a lot more yardage than just the 440 or so that they did. So, in my opinion, as crazy as this sounds, but I think the Giants are in a position where they can out-offense Minnesota. I really believe that. They did it already a couple of weeks ago. They did it. They've done it once. And Minnesota had 2 penalties that day. The Giants had 7. And the Giants dropped 2 interceptions. Well, not dropped. Flott dropped 1 because it hit the ground. Moreau had 1 taken away by a penalty.
Yes.
The Giants offense was clearly the better offense that day. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're better on Sunday. So I get it. You don't want Cook to necessarily control the ball, but I'm also of the opinion that the Giants can score quickly. Daniel Jones took them 75 yards for the tying score in 59 seconds.
I'm not going to dispute that. I just want everybody to be careful. Let's not talk as if this is going to be easy.
I didn't say that.
No, I didn't say you're saying that. This is where when I say it's a winnable game, meaning there's no reason why we can't win that game. But
here's the point.
But there's
Russ.
no reason why we can't lose the game either.
Here's the point. Okay, here's the point. All right, the Vikings played about as well as they could play in that game 2 weeks ago. Again, they had only 2 penalties. They didn't turn the ball over. They came up with a block punt on special teams. Okay? Yeah. These are all big things that they did well. They played a clean game, and they came up with turnovers. They came up with the block punt. It all worked out well for them, and they needed a 61-yard field goal on the final play to win. The Giants self-destructed in about 7 different ways. So if the Giants play a clean game and their A game, they will win this game. It's that simple. If I know what you like to say, and it's a clean show, so don't go there.
No, well, if
but the point is,
every day would be
yes,
Christmas, right?
Dan Reeves.
Yeah.
The point is, the Giants play their A game. This is their game to win or lose.
Well, again, if the Giants play their A game and the other team plays their A game,
we've already seen the Vikings A game, and it took a 61-yard field goal on the final play.
We'll see. Again, listen, I want them to win. I believe they can win.
To your point.
I just don't think.
Your point, how many times have the Giants played their A game this year?
Well, how many times have they been in shape to play their A game this year with a full complement of players?
Exactly. And now they are.
But I just get worried sitting next to you because I know you have your big blue pom-poms in your pocket.
I got my purple G2 Gatorade, which I'm very happy to drink regardless of the color of the other team.
You got your big blue undies on. You got your Dr. Denton big blues when you go home to sleep.
You saw the game 2 weeks ago?
Listen, I'm not disputing anything. 2 weeks ago, what, against the Colts?
No, 3 weeks ago now. It's 3 weeks ago. You saw the game.
I know.
And I was on the sideline.
I know what I saw.
I know who the better team was that day.
That day. It's one day at a time.
Yes, sir.
It's 1-0. That's what you have to be. Giant fans, take your fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2023 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And again, just a reminder, folks, Big Blue Kickoff Live here is brought to you by Pepsi Zero Sugar, new and approved. Zero never tasted so good. 201-939-4513 is the number. Let's go to, we're going to go to our buddy in Delaware, Coach Marvin. Hey, Coach, how we doing today?
Doing good. How you doing, Russ?
Doing real good. Getting ready for the playoffs.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm wonderful, Coach. How are you?
I'm good.
You talk some sense into my guy next door here. Talk some sense into him. You saw what you saw.
This is how I'm going to say it. Because I understand Russ's side, and it's true. I really understand that part. But as a coach, that's not how I'm looking at it as a coach. As fans and wanting to get your team ready to play, I always used to talk about the 3 Ps. I don't know if y'all ever talked about the 3 Ps. You have prepare, which you study, you get your body ready to go. You practice the game plan, and then you perform. And that's what they're going to have to do this weekend. Now, a few weeks ago, I talked to you, Paul. I think you were on with Lance after that game. And I said, if that was my team, I would have told them in the locker room I was proud of how they played, and that this team that we just played, they're going to see us again. And I'd be dead serious when I say it. we want to see them again. And guess what? We are seeing them again. And that's how you're going to have to approach this game, that this is the team, based on what happened this year, this is the team we want to see. We want this game. Doesn't guarantee we're going to win, and it doesn't guarantee we're going to lose. But I tell you what, they're going to recognize we're on the field with them. And that's all I want them to know, because we're coming to play this time compared to the last time. And the other part to that is they're not. You don't know how much adjustments they're going to make because they won the game. A lot of times when you win the game, there's not a lot of adjustments you make. What makes a team that lose dangerous, I don't know what I'm getting the second time they come.
Well, I think...
And that is the surprise.
Before you go anywhere, no, this is important to say. Before you go anywhere, Coach Marvin, they didn't have McKinney. They didn't have Jackson. Ojulari and Leonard Williams came out early in the first half of that game. So think about this now. In terms of adjustments and different looks, the Giants are going to have a lot more different stuff defensively to show the Vikings than what they saw that day.
No. Listen, Coach, I happen to totally agree in the fact when that game ended, and I said this to Paul, we want to play them again. We definitely want to play them again. And, we would kind of do your permutations and combinations. Is this going to work out? And we thought it had a real good chance of working out. And sure enough, no, listen, I'm glad we're playing. I just don't make it sound as if it's going to be easy. But when you talk about coaches talking about adjustments, I'll give you an example, an adjustment they're going to make. I don't think they expected to see what they got from what the Giants were going to give them from Isaiah Hodgins. I think that's going to be some adjustment. They're going to be looking out for Isaiah Hodgins because he was a force in that game. So they're going to be looking. Right. Everybody's going to make adjustments. That's what you do.
Sure.
That's what coaches do.
Yeah, you do. But again, like I said, when you win, it really depends how much adjustments you're going to make from your game plan, because you won the game. So your game plan pretty much will stay the same going against that team you played.
Coach Marvin, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something instead of you asking us. Let me turn it around for a minute. You're the Vikings. You're going to be missing 2/5 of a very suspect offensive line, and the guys who are coming in aren't exactly going to make you feel very comfortable, and you're going up against this Giants pass rush and Wink Martindale with this defensive front. That should be a huge advantage for the Giants. If you're Minnesota, what in the world do you do to try to combat that very, very large Giants advantage?
Well, like everybody would say, if you got a team that can really rush the passer, you're going to have to run at those rushers and control the clock on the ground. You can't. You got to get them in play action, get them in misdirections. If they're aggressive, I want to get them in misdirections. I want them going one direction, get their feet and eyes going in one direction, and then I go another. That's where you get screens over the top of them. You do draw plays underneath them. And there's a lot of things you can do to try, but I mean they're very difficult because eventually they can get to you unless you can keep them off balance. A lot of times I played teams that was more athletic than our teams, and the way I had to control those teams is I always told my staff we have to come up with plays to get their eyes looking in the wrong direction and their feet standing still. Because if you're fast and you're standing still, guess what? You ain't that fast. So you gotta do things, misdirections, run the ball. Definitely got to run the ball to get those guys pounding on them a little bit. So I would expect that's what they want to do, because they don't want to put those linemen one-on-one with the Giants.
No, they don't. But you know what, Coach?
They don't want to do that.
That plays to my other point, though. If you're the Giants' defense, you would almost rather have Cook get more touches than Jefferson and Hockenson, because those are the two guys that caused you trouble last time.
Right.
See, so that plays into the Giants' hands, too.
Yeah, it could. Yes, it could. And I think another part, if they come out throwing, if I'm Minnesota and we come out throwing, I got these guys, probably second string or third string on the line. How are they going to handle those stunts with the way they're coming at them as far as their scheming, their blitzes? Are they going to be able to recognize those blitzes? Are we going to be doing blitzes that they haven't seen? And that would worry me if I'm Minnesota, if they're going to start doing stuff like that, because I can't afford them to get in Cousins' face. I just can't afford it, because they're going to cause us to have turnovers.
Mm-hmm. And that's what Cousins does. 14 interceptions this year, tied for third in the NFL.
Right, and that's because you get people in his face, and he tends to just throw it up there. I've seen passes he's completed, and he never saw the pass completed.
You know what, I'm
that's
sorry.
tough.
Go ahead, Coach Marv. Let me ask you, and I'm going to ask Paul, both of you this question. Do you think we're going to see any trickery, fun plays, funky plays in the Giants playbook this week? I got a feeling we will.
Well, they showed the fake field goal last week, right? They showed the onside kick. They showed a wide receiver option. They had a couple of things in the playbook last week.
Well, the onside kick was not trickery because there was no other choice.
Right,
they had to do it. But I thought that receiver option, all of a sudden, what was it with Cager?
Yeah.
You know, so we'll see.
I don't know that they need trickery to beat the Vikings, to be honest with you.
But they don't. Sometimes trickery can get you in trouble. I had trick plays. But you got to set it up, that trick play to set up. You're not going to run a lot of trick plays. You stay basically the way you are. And if you can get them, like I said, you can get them going in one direction. Because I always tell my kids, every time I want to play out of the same formation, we run in a play, and if it's a trick play, I want that play off that other play that's a trick play. I want it to look exactly the same.
It has
to. So what I used to do, I used to stand in the secondary. I used to play safety, just sit back and play the safety spot. And I always told them, if you fool me, then you're going to fool them. So you ain't got too many of those plays. So for them to run a lot of trick plays, last week they ran some, like I think Paul just said they had to. But you put Minnesota on alert to, okay, these guys, they may come out and do some stuff like that. But if you stay in your base and then you got a trick play off your base, you can catch them. But I always only have one. And the majority of the time I didn't run them in a game. But if I'm playing a difficult game, then that's when I'm going to bring it out. If it's a difficult game and I need a play, I got to come up with something they haven't seen and their coach haven't coached them on. Because, again, you're coaching against their players. So what the players know, only what their coaches taught them, and only what they study. I got to show them something they've never seen before.
All right.
And that's how trick plays work.
Okay, Coach Marv.
Be well, Coach.
Thanks very much. 201-939-4513 is the number. The Giants' official connected TV streaming app, Giants TV, brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, folks, is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. 201-939-4513. You wanted to say something, Paulie?
No, I was only going to add that, Coach Marvin was talking about the different things that you employ as a coach when you're trying to prep your team in terms of trick plays and stuff like that. We went back all the way into training camp, and if you remember, Coach Dable did have an assortment of them.
Yeah, he did.
And we haven't really seen them, which means either A, they didn't find need to use them, B, they didn't want to use them, but we saw him running them. He's got a few up his sleeve.
Yes.
I don't think he needs them, though.
No, well, you know what? You don't know if you need them. You got to see the way the game is going. But at the same point, I think what might have taken some of the trickery away out of his
close games too.
Not just close games, but injuries and the way everything else. You know, that your personnel dictates what kind of trickery and who can do the trickery.
Very fair.
So 201-939-4513 is the number. Let's stay here in Jersey, Paulie, and speak with Hugo. How you doing, Hugo? How's it going with Hugo?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. I actually called about a different topic, but given the conversation, I think I'm going to shift and talk about the game a little bit more than I intended to. And it's interesting that you guys brought up trick plays because I think with the Giants' clear advantage going into this game in the trenches, and you subscribe to the theory that you win in games in the trenches, I don't think the Giants are going to have to do a lot of trickery. But I am concerned, given the thin offensive line that Minnesota has, that they're going to be the ones trying to run trick plays. So, this could be a game where you have to blitz selectively because I am sure they're going to try to, go with the fast screen game, maybe to Dalvin Cook or the wide receiver screens, which, obviously burned us on that last series and last game.
Mm-hmm.
So, you blitz, but maybe not blitz as much as you usually do. And I would say that the blitzes are probably going to come up the middle because the offensive line is going to maybe shift to the right to cover for their deficiencies at right tackle, and certainly try to double Dexter Lawrence, which will free up a gap for a blitzer up the middle. So maybe a slightly different game plan because man-to-man, you can beat those guys up front with our front four.
See, what the good news about Wink, and you'll appreciate this, Russ, because we've talked all the year about he says he's got a positionless defense, right? Guys don't have real positions. They play anywhere and everything. The beauty of it is that when he's got his different formations and pre-snap scheming going on, that offensive line and Kirk Cousins, they're not going to know what the hell it is that they're seeing. That kaleidoscope defense that Wink shows them on a play-by-play basis, part of what Wink does is he messes with your head because you think you know who's coming. You think you know how many guys are in the pressure package, and then you don't because he's sending different guys or he's dropping guys out. And that, to me, the intimidation of Wink's confusion is a big part of what's going to give their offensive line a lot of trouble.
You just said something, Paul, the intimidation. Listen, all of a sudden, he's got his defense, if it's not totally intact, it hasn't been more intact, and he's been waiting for that. So now he's got his four guys up front. He's got, Leo. He's got Sexy Dexy. He's got Aziz. He's got Kayvon. He's got McKinney. He's got
Adoree Jackson.
All of a sudden, Julian, all of a sudden, they're there, and they're there together. He hasn't had that. I remember earlier, a few weeks back when Dable was asked about, well, are you feeling more confident now that you have your edge rushers? And Brian brought it out. He said, yeah, you do, but, you like to see what happens when Xavier comes back and Adoree comes back. They're there. I think that's a very good point. That word intimidation.
That's what Wink does.
Yeah, that's what Wink does. And Hugo, thanks for the call. That's what Wink does, and, that enables you to do that. I also believe in these kind of games, and it's not because it's the Giants and that's because it's the Vikings. These type of games, especially if you're the road team, and we know the Giants, can take care of business with so much at stake. It's good to get off to I'm not saying you can't win if you don't do it, but it's imperative to get off to a good start, take that crowd, keep them calm, quiet, as opposed to falling in a hole early and letting the crowd get revved up.
I think they've actually handled the crowd noise pretty well this year, including that game in Minnesota. For me, it's not even getting the early jump. It's just making sure that you don't have 3 and outs that allows the crowd to gain momentum.
Right.
I don't mind if Minnesota takes a 7-0 lead. Hell, they took a lead in the game 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the Giants came back. It's all about when you have a potential turning point in the game, you need to make sure that you tilt the field. You don't let them tilt the field, which means you don't turn it over. You don't have a 3 and out. You make sure that you give that crowd the feeling that, the Giants are here to play and we've got a problem. You want that crowd feeling anxious and nervous. You want them to have the agita.
No, I couldn't agree more. But at the same point, Paul, I don't want it coming down to the Giants having to come back again and score, being down 8, score with 51 seconds left, then have to make a 2-point conversion because there's not enough straitjackets around to be able to strap you in if you have to deal with that in a postseason game.
This game will not come down to that.
Okay.
Trust me.
Okay, listen. Paulie's doing everything but guaranteeing victory.
I'm not guaranteeing anything.
Okay, all right. 201-939-4513 is the number. Again, folks, you are listening to Big Blue Kickoff Live, brought to you by Pepsi Zero Sugar. New and improved. Zero never tasted so good. Let's go down to Florida and check in with Ralph. How we doing, Ralphie? You're on with Russ and Paul.
Guys.
Hi.
Hey, guys. Happy New Year. I haven't
too.
talked to you guys in a while.
Appreciate it.
Just one thing. Paulie, I love the enthusiasm. Don't get me wrong. I really do. But my thing is, I don't want my team walking in that door overconfident.
No.
Oh, no. Ralph, I as much as I'm having fun with Paul, I'm more worried about let Paul be overconfident.
No.
I don't want the Giants to be overconfident.
My man, here's the thing. I believe what Parcells taught me many, many years ago. He said you have to be assertive and you have to impose your will on the opposition, especially in one of these kinds of games. Well, you can't be assertive and intense and impose your will on them if you go in thinking that, oh, we have a chance to win. No, you don't go in saying we have a chance to win. You go in saying we're going to do what we're going to do and we're taking what's ours. Tough.
Okay,
That's
get
what you
that,
do.
Paul. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we keep dwelling back on the game 3 weeks ago. The game 3 weeks ago was a game 3 weeks ago. This game is a totally different game. High stakes, higher game. My thing, I believe you. I think we have a great chance of winning this game. I just feel like everybody outside of the building is picking the Giants to win. I just don't want my team walking in there saying, you know what, this game's ours.
No, you can't do it.
That's the reason I
agree.
That's all I'm saying. And as far as my second point, my thing is, if it's a one-score game, I'm with Lance. The law of averages. This team is 11-0 in one-score games.
The Vikes.
The bubble has to bust. Bubble has to bust.
But what are we? I think we're Ralph. The Giants, I think, are 8-3 in one-score games.
But I'm just saying, we're 8-3. We lost those bubble games. That's what I mean. We're already the bubble busted.
You know what, Ralph? Thanks for the call, buddy. You could say that, but I heard, driving in, I heard some people talking about that. Listen, they're 11-0, but as I say, the Giants are 8-3, so everybody knows how to win the close games. To me, is this: when I look at a team, I've heard criticism of the Vikings. Well, they win all these. All their wins were like
one-score games.
One-score games. Well, you know what? That tells me they know how to win those close games.
And they got a lot of guts. Yeah. And they got a lot of poise.
So that ain't no knock. I'm not
knocking them. The Vikings got what they deserved this year. Good for them.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay?
I'm not poo-pooing being 11-0 in one-score games.
There was one dispute though about what he said. Yeah, you're right. These aren't the same teams that played 3 weeks ago. Yeah. The Giants now have a healthy Jackson. Okay, they now have a healthy McKinney. They now will have Williams and Ojulari, who got knocked out early in that game. So 2 members of their critical pass rush were unable to play 3/4 of that game. And the Vikings are now missing 2 members of their offensive line. Yeah. And the replacements are Swiss cheese. So you're right. These are not the same teams. The Giants have now tilted that balance much more in their favor.
Speaking of not the same teams, I'd be remiss if we didn't bring this up. You and I have been talking about the mystery of all mysteries, missing in action Kenny Golladay. And all of a sudden, Kenny didn't come up with a catch like being like kind of a Plaxico in the end zone, reaching up, using his height to grab it. That was a sensational circus grab. It was a wonderful play. Sitting watching it, I couldn't have been happier for him. It was great seeing Daves go over to him and talk to him. Everybody wants to, it's like, well, why isn't this? Why isn't that? Whatever it was, he made the great catch. And Paul and I were talking, I don't know how that fits into a game plan. I don't know if he fits into the game plan. But this much I know. The Vikings saw that. If they didn't see it, they will see it looking at the tape. And that puts a little something in their head. And that's another something to think about.
Yes, sir.
And that has to do with game planning. So that's good. But
it is.
What a catch.
It was an outstanding catch. And what I loved about it was that after in the locker room, Kenny went out of his way to try to shine the spotlight on, hey, that was Davis Webb's first start, and I wanted to make that catch for him.
Yeah,
How unselfish was he about that.
And how that's why I said that was part of why the game was one of my favorite games of the season. Also, how the players were so happy for Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's this team.
It's a team.
It's a team. It's got remarkable chemistry. It's got remarkable camaraderie. You know, it's just they're together. You know, and they need to be together this coming Sunday in Minnesota. 201-939-4513, the number. Let's go to, let's stay in New Jersey and check in with Lamar. How we doing today, Lamar? You're on with Russ and Paul.
Hey, it's Lamont, like on Sanford and Son.
Lamont.
Yeah. I've called a couple of times.
Oh, like on Sanford and Son, you big dummy? Okay.
Great show. Great show.
All right, Lamont.
Yeah. Anyway, you know, I haven't called in a while. I talked to you guys over the off season when the coaching staff got together. I was so excited about the coaching staff, and I was correct.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Great coaching staff.
Anyway.
Outstanding coaching staff.
Yes, and I knew this was going to happen. I wanted to wait till the end of the season when you get to the playoffs, so that I knew they would take us to the playoffs. Now, I just want to talk about Sunday. We should win this game. I mean, I feel like the Vikings are a Jekyll and Hyde team, and if they concentrate on Jefferson, it would be lost. And I got so much faith in Wink Martindale, and he's going to definitely be able to mix up Cousins, you know. So I'm really excited about this week. And, I mean, they got a better record than us, but, you know, playoffs time now, so, you know.
Hey, as Parcells, you know, Paulie and I heard it ad nauseum. All you got to do, Lamont, and thank you for the call, all you got to do is get into the tournament. And believe me, that's all Parcells ever preached from day one. Just the hardest thing is getting into the tournament. You got to prevail over what's now a 17-game schedule. Mm-hmm. You have to get into the tournament. Then once you're in, then it's okay. Then it's to enhance what Brian Dable likes to say, you got to go 1-0 each week. But the hardest thing really is to get into that tournament. You have to prevail for now what's turned to a 17-game schedule.
And you'll remember, Russ, that Parcells was a big boxing guy. And styles make fights.
100%.
Well, that's why this is such a good game for the Giants.
I agree 100%.
Because the matchups, the individual matchups, specifically in the trenches, heavily favors the Giants, especially defensive line against their offensive line. Now, the Vikings have a pretty decent defensive line themselves. Don't get me wrong. They've got a couple of good players up there. But the Giants' offensive line can hold their own against them. I don't see how the Vikings offensive line, especially in their current state, can hold up against the Giants defensive front. I just don't see it. And that more than anything else, if you believe in football 101 and the core beliefs of pro football and how the games are won, the trenches is where it all starts. The Giants should have a significant edge in the trenches. That's the basic root of why I feel very assertive about telling you the Giants will win this game.
From your mouth to the man's upstairs ears. Okay, 201-939-4513 is the number. Let's go to Connecticut and check in with Steve. Hello, Steve. You're on with Russ and Paul. How we doing?
Hey, guys. What's going on? How are you?
Good.
Hi.
So I just wanted to know, I know, like, a lot of people are, scared to say it, and I don't by any means think that this team should be a favorite to make a run. But they do, especially, in Giants history, we haven't, we've got our, for sure, our last two championships, not with teams that were dominant, the favorites going in, but teams who were, good enough to compete. And I do feel like this team actually has a lot of similarities to the 07 and 11 teams. I think the quarterbacks, I think the pass rush, I think, they have a similar makeup, with obviously the big difference being between those two teams was the strength offensively, was their the passing game. This team has a much stronger edge, though, in the running game, right? In 2011, I think the Giants were ranked 32nd in rushing going into the playoffs. So,
yeah, but Bradshaw and Jacobs got it going there down the stretch, and they could run it when they had to. And the offensive line was better as a whole than it is now.
And Steve,
and the receiving core, too.
Steve, I get what you're saying, but I got to disagree because to compare it, Paul just took the offensive line were studs. Okay, that offensive line were studs, and you're talking about a receiving core. Again, I'm liking what I've seen. You've heard Paul and myself give him full marks, full credit, but this receiving core, as it constitutes now, is not what it was.
Here's what I'll tell you: this team is nowhere near as talented roster-wise as those championship teams. The NFL, though, specifically the NFC as a whole, is not as good as it was in those years either.
Yeah, that's right.
Right now, the Niners, in my opinion, have moved up to be the number one team in the NFC. Well, they're the class of the conference right now.
I would say, to me, 100%.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie to you.
Well,
I'm glad it's turned out the way it's turned out, because I didn't want to go into San Francisco.
You would not want to.
No.
And as it is now, the Giants cannot go to San Francisco until the championship game. The NFC Championship.
And then if we get to that, I'll take my chances wherever I gotta
sure
go.
You will. Anyway, go ahead.
So if I could just, I had a question for you, but just before that, what I would say, though, about this team talent-wise, I really do believe that if they do end up making some sort of run, how they said sort of with the team, with the Miracle on Ice, against, a lot of the people look back and said that looking back, a lot of those people were sort of less surprises down the line than they were at the time, and it was just that they were more unknown. And I feel like very similar with this team that, a lot of these guys are young, and if they do go ahead and make a run, I think that we might be less surprised a couple years down the line looking at how some of these players turned out.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Stephen. Thank you for the call because we're up against it. We got to move on. I'm going to say this. I love this team. I love the coaching staff. I love everything about it. I love the esprit de corps. Just everything about it. But win or lose, there's going to be changes on this team next season.
Mm-hmm.
So let's enjoy what we have right now. We want to talk about a run. That's fine. We can't talk about the run unless we go 1-0 this weekend in Minnesota. Let's go to Andrew out on Long Island. Hello, Andrew. You're on with Russ and Paul.
Hey, how are you? First time caller.
Welcome aboard, buddy. What's going on?
Yeah. I was just curious if what's the chances of us having a home playoff game? What would have to happen for us to have a home playoff game?
Seattle would have to get to the NFC Championship game with us in order to host the Seahawks.
It ain't happening.
No, I'm sure that's not going to. Believe me, I'm a big Seahawks fan this year. I don't want to see the Eagles. 'Cause I know if the Seahawks win, we would need to see what Tampa or Dallas, right? If we won, obviously.
If the Seahawks win and the Giants advance, they get the winner of Dallas-Tampa Bay. That is correct.
Yeah. So I would definitely rather see that. Now, I just had a question about the Vikings game we played like 3 weeks ago. I don't know if it was one of you guys talking, but somebody was saying that you didn't want to show, like if we play the game, you didn't want to show us all their plays. I guess because we might see them again in the future.
Whatever, Andrew. Thank you for the call, buddy. You didn't hear that from us. Giants weren't going into that game hoping to save something because nothing was clinched. So you certainly didn't hear that from me, and I know you didn't hear it from Paul. You're not saving anything when elimination is kind of staring you in the face. I don't think there was any holding back in that game.
Not at that point.
What about the Vikings doing that?
I don't think so either.
The Vikings were still hoping to grab the number one seed or the number two.
Pearson, I mean,
they weren't holding anything back in that game. No way.
I don't believe.
No way.
I just don't believe that. It's crunch time. I mean, listen. This past weekend, the Giants played the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles had themselves a playoff spot locked up. They had a playoff spot locked up. Their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, who's having an MVP season, is, no pun intended, Hurts is hurting. But you know what? Hurts played because they wanted to make sure in their minds to get the number 1 seed in the NFC. So, I mean, there's no holding back.
No, not at all.
I
not
mean,
at all.
You're talking about playing for all the marbles. This is, again, we'll continue, Paul and I, because we go back to those days. Go to Coach Parcells, Big Tuna. Just about getting into the tournament. When you saw Parcells after they would clinch and getting in, when they clinched their playoff spot, man, was he happy.
Well, yeah.
He was floating on air because that's what it's all about. It's getting in. These Giants are in. They're in the tournament.
Extend your season. That's the deal.
You know, it's not something to this business of holding back. We're worried about.
No.
3 weeks ago, the Giants didn't want to. What were the Giants going to hold back? I mean, they were one receiver hurt. The next guy up was going to be Paul Dottino. I mean,
you don't want to see that.
No.
Hey, Russ, look, before we go, I would just want to tell all your Big Blue Giants fans out there, tonight, WFAN is airing a special from 7 to 9 p.m. from the Blue Ale Pub up in Riverdale, New Jersey. It's out Route 23. Out your neck of the woods, out Route 23.
Yeah.
And Bob Papa, Carl Banks, and Tiki Barber are going to host it. It's on the Fan. It's a 2-hour Giant preview special. Brandon London and myself will be there to kind of entertain the fans during the course of the 2-hour show. So we look forward to seeing you out there tonight because, this is a big-time playoff week for the Giants. Haven't had one in a while, and we're going to try to just blow it out and have a bash.
Where is the...
It's in Riverdale, New Jersey. Blue Ale Pub. You know what?
Okay.
I don't have the address.
No, but Blue Ale Pub, fans can look it up. Well, I didn't know that. Paulie's making an appearance.
Isn't that something?
Isn't that terrific?
They're bringing out the old fossils from years ago for something like this.
And it's going to be Papa
Banks and Tiki Barber hosting the show that'll be on the air 2 hours on the Fan.
7 to 9.
From 7 to 9 tonight.
And they'll wrap it up with your guarantee.
I don't know about that.
All right,
but we'll have a good time.
Speaking of wrapping it up with Paul's guarantee, it's time for us to wrap it up here. Our thanks to Pearson Butler at the controls. Our thanks to you, the people, my good buddy Paulie Dots, Paul Dottino here. I'm Russ Salzberg. Always remember, folks, that Big Blue Kickoff Live was brought to you by Pepsi Zero Sugar, new and improved. Zero never tasted so good. Until next time, it is us saying to you bye-bye, so long, and farewell. Go Big Blue, and we hope to see you here next week as we're talking about a preview to yet another playoff game. See you then.